yourself. Don't we wish it was that easy? I know there are times when I certainly do. Believe in yourself. Yeah. That is something that we anchor here in Unity, though, right? This idea that we believe in ourselves. And there's something also about this idea of the way that I believe in you, which is also integral to what we understand here at Unity and how we show up for each other. So I wanted to speak about this idea of courage to heal, because the courage to heal is, as I said, the theme for World Day of Prayer, and it was the theme for the prayer retreat that we just had. And I just thought I would share some of the pictures of the energy of what was happening on this retreat. It was lit up, right? Literally lit up. We were doing some smudging as we were entering the labyrinth. You see all of us walking the labyrinth. We did a very powerful ritual there at the end. And one of the questions, the central question that the prayer chaplains were wrestling with and sitting with and opening ourselves up to was, what is healing? Like, what exactly does that mean? Particularly, what does that mean for us here in Unity? So what do you guys think? What is healing? And prayer chaplains, give other people a chance to speak up here. So what is healing? What do we think healing is?
To be made whole.
To be made whole. Yeah, and actually, that is precisely Charles Fillmore's definition.
Totally didn't you?
Right? True healing means to make whole. If you actually look at where the word healing arises from in language derivatives, it actually arises from the word whole, holy. They all have the same connotation. So this idea of healing means to be made whole, right? And that happens on a lot of different levels. We know that there can be healing on a physical level. We know that that happens. We know that our own movement was founded by Myrtle Fillmore's exploration and journey through her own physical healing as she was navigating tuberculosis, which in that time was considered a death sentence. People thought it was genetic because whole families would get it because of the close quarters they were in. And she was able, through the power of affirmative prayer and through the power of knowing wholeness, to actually overcome, right, and heal herself so that the tuberculosis was no longer something that she was experiencing. So physical healing is a very real aspect of what healing is about. And yet, we all know this, yes? There is so much more going on than just a physical healing. Myrtle Fillmore's journey wasn't just about healing her body temple. What she was doing was going through and healing the emotional and the mental and the spiritual understanding of who she was. Now, I'm sure you can all hear I have a cold. I'm on the end of it, right? And I have shared this with other people in the class and everything. This is the tail end of a chemicalization for me. So yes, I got sick. It doesn't matter why or whatever that is. But what happened as I got sick was all of a sudden I was 20 years old again. It felt the same. It lived in my body the same way. All of a sudden I was re-experiencing the emotions that I felt when I was in my 20s, and let me tell you, we don't want to go back there. We really don't want to go back there. But there was an opportunity there for me to actually become present to something else within me that was asking to be healed. Can you feel that? That there was something else that was living on another plane, that was asking for me to understand my wholeness, to actually understand it in a completely different way. So why would this require courage? Why do we need courage in order to heal? It's not rhetorical. Because we have to change our attitudes. Because something within us has to shift, right? Why else does it require courage?
We have to face hard things.
We may have to face something, right? And it may seem as if it's going to be hard. It may seem as if it's going to be difficult. We might have to look at aspects of ourselves that we'd actually prefer to sort of keep over here in the corner, nicely covered up, and I don't really want to look at that too closely, because ouch. Like, ouch, it hurts. It's painful, actually, to remember that. And I gotta tell you, thinking about myself in my early 20s, that was kind of painful. I was very lost in my 20s. So to actually be re-experiencing parts of that was uncomfortable. Now, I've been doing this teaching a long time, so I actually welcomed it. I was like, oh man, bring it. Bring it, bring it, bring it. Because I am going to heal this. Because I am now in a completely different place than I was when I was 20. I've got tools, I've got awareness, I've got wisdom. I have a community that I can lean into. I have a whole lot that I get to bring online in a way that I couldn't do then. And I talk about this a lot, about how when we're talking about healing, we're talking about our capacity to even show up for ourselves as our own answered prayer. I get to show up now for that 20-year-old who was so lost, who was floundering around, trying to figure out her sexual identity, she was trying to figure out so much, and she was struggling in that. I get to stand and say, look how awesome we turned out. Look at me, right? And there's a healing that is possible in that space. So, I love this quote from William Faulkner. You cannot swim for new horizons until you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. So this is what people are speaking to. We have to be willing to let go of whatever it is that we think we know. Whatever it is that has gotten us to this point. It was awesome, it got you here. Woohoo! Time to let it go. What else is there for you? What new understandings are available to you? What else can you bring to yourself which will enable you, because you're bringing it to yourself, because what do we know? There's only one activity happening. So as I bring that healing to myself, guess what? I am bringing it to the world simultaneously. So here's the real question that, as we were discussing during the retreat, that really the nutshell of it all. Do you believe you are innately whole? Really? And this is a hard one, even for people who have been in this teaching for a long time. Because our seeming brokenness, all those places, those spaces within us that are sore and painful and raw, they're familiar. They're comfortable. You know that expression, better the devil you know? It's really, it's an expression because it's true. We'd rather stick with the unhappiness. We'd rather stick with the suffering that we know, because on some level we are navigating it. On some level we are managing it. Can you embrace the fact that you, right now, you don't have to do anything. You, right now, are innately whole. That every aspect of your being, right now, there is that which is perfect, whole. And it is just waiting. You hear my cough? It's just waiting to reveal itself more fully and more powerfully. And do you feel how that got stuck in my throat? Because it's hard sometimes to actually acknowledge our wholeness, because guess what? It means we have to give up our story. We have to give up the story. We have to give up the story about how we survived. We have to give up the story about how strong we are in the face of all the adversity that we have suffered or lived through or navigated. We have to give it up and allow something else to make itself known. So Myrtle has this quote, which just makes me laugh. We accept the God-given perfection. We wave aside the past mistakes and the untrue suggestions and fix undivided attention upon the inner pattern of perfection.
Yes.
It sounds awesome, right?
Yes.
How many people in here can do that all the time? I love that. Wave aside the past mistakes. Oh. Now let's be clear. There are a lot of things in my life that I actually can do that for. That I've done the work, that I've sat with it, that I can anchor it, that I can know it. And then there are those spaces and those places in my life where I get hung up. Where I get hooked into my story. Where I get hooked into whatever it is that some part of me is attached to. So when I broke my back, and I've shared this story, when I broke my back in my 20s, the doctors were kind of amazed that I wasn't healing. You know, I've shared that I started to experience paralysis and all of these things, and the doctors were like, you're young, you're healthy, you should be healing. And I wasn't. Because there was some part of me that wanted everyone out there to see and acknowledge and know how unsupported I felt in my life. And I got that clarity eventually. That I was holding on to this debilitating injury, exasperating it actually, because there was a part of me that wanted everybody to know the truth. That I was not supported. And so what was showing up in my life? Nobody was supporting me. I mean, because that's what I was trying to prove, right? I wasn't making room for people to support me. I wasn't making room for true healing to happen. And I want to be really clear, one of the things we talked about is the difference between a healing and a cure. So you can have a healing and not be cured. And you can have a cure and not be healed. Can you feel the truth of that? The ideal world is that we have a healing and we're cured. But they are not the same thing. Cure is really just focused on your physical plane. Healing is working on every dimension of your being. I was not allowing the cure because I first needed to heal the emotional component of what was happening within me. So I could not wave aside my past mistakes. I could not just know the truth for myself. So I did actually, eventually, through meditation and a really deep spiritual practice and alternative health modalities, find a cure. But then in my 40s, my back came back again. The pain came back again. I had gone 5 years in chronic pain, and all of a sudden, it was gone. I've shared that story too, how the pain was such a constant that it seemed normal. And my first moment of not experiencing pain actually felt weird and wrong. Like, that's how adaptable we are. And in my 40s, the pain came back again. And I'll tell you, I was immediately back in my 20s. I was immediately paralyzed and in my bed. I was immediately that girl again. And I was a girl. I may have been in my 20s, but that was not me being a woman. That was me being a girl. And so, what I had to do was call my prayer partner. Thank God I had them. Because I couldn't know that for myself. I couldn't see it for myself. I had to call someone else crying and have them reflect back to me the truth of who I was. Remind me who I truly am. Believe in myself as much as they believed the truth about who I was. And that is the power of prayer partners. That is the power of prayer chaplains. Because even if you don't have a prayer partner, you do. Because the prayer chaplains are available to know the truth for you, to facilitate you remembering who you are, to facilitate the process of healing. So, one of the exercises we did I called Love Letters from God, because we're God, right? And we were showing up for each other. And many of you, if you've taken my classes, you've done that exercise where you go around to another person and you look into their eyes and you take a moment and then you bow to them and you say, you know, you are love. You are light. And they do the same thing to you. And then you move on to another person. So we took it to the next level during the retreat. And I bought pens that you could write on skin with. And so instead of just telling the person what they were, what people could see, you told them and then you literally wrote it on their body. Literally wrote it on their body. So we had all kinds of these amazing words being written on people's bodies. And for people who resisted, didn't want to have it on their skin, we had labels. So people were covered in labels if that was more comfortable for them. And I have to tell you, as we were going through this exercise, people were giggling and laughing and connecting all at the same time. It was so powerful. Robert took it right to the top there, right? Took it right to the top. And it was healing. It was powerfully and profoundly healing. To see and to be seen. To touch and to be touched by truth in that way. Because ultimately, that's all we all want. We all just want for our innate worthiness to be recognized. For the thing that is our most authentic self to be seen and acknowledged and celebrated. And to actually see someone as whole is the greatest gift that we can give. Not only to other people, but do you give that gift to yourself? Do you look in the mirror and recognize your wholeness? Do you see a radiant light that you actually are? Or are you focused on all the ways that you think you've failed, that you think you've fallen short, that you think you're not enough? Do you believe in your innate wholeness? Really? Truly? So how do we activate this kind of healing? How do we activate our capacity to actually stand in that place of healing? So the first step is we have to let go of what we think we know. So in that exercise, each person had to let go of who they thought they were. They had to let go of this idea that they were going to project something onto the person who was looking at them. They had to let go that they had any control over what that person was going to see, what that person was going to acknowledge. They had to let it go. And let me tell you, that can create some anxiety. Yeah. They had to be willing to be vulnerable. They had to be willing to actually be touched. If we're not actually willing to open our hearts, truly open our hearts, then that means we're not willing to be changed. Because that's what this is, folks. This beautiful interaction that we do with each other is all about allowing ourselves to always reveal our greatest yet to be by rubbing up against those things that it's time to let go of. And then we have to activate faith and just step out in it. We have to say, you know, this sounds really kind of dumb. This idea seems really kind of hokey. This idea seems really kind of goofy. But you know what? I'm just going to step out in it. I'm just going to try it. I'm going to do it without the judgment. I'm just going to see what happens. And what arose out of that exercise, and what arises when we do that, is the possibility, oh my goodness, that we might actually have fun. Right? We might actually have a good time. We might actually touch a place of joy within us. I love this quote from Charles. We should cultivate those activities which stimulate naturally the currents of life in the body. One of these, and a very important one, is joy. So what do you do to support your joy? What activates within you? What do you do to activate and keep those currents of life moving in your body? I know that when I was experiencing my going to different healing modalities and discovering meditation and yoga and all these things when I broke my back, that part of how I knew I was on the right track was because I could feel, it was subtle, it was just like a little burble every now and then. You know those bubblers where the water just kind of bubbles a little bit? It was like that, it was like a little bloom, 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 joy, bloom, bloom, joy, oh! And the more I did, the more I began to recognize, like, oh, that's joy. Oh, I want more of that. And it becomes your compass. It becomes the way you know, is this the thing that is supporting my healing? Is this the thing that is going to allow me finally to set aside my old story, to finally let go of that sense that, oh, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, oh my goodness, that story is so old, isn't it?
Yep.
And we all carry some version of it. Oh, what if we really focused on the joy? That's where we place our attention, because we know that what we place our attention on grows in consciousness. That is how we begin to activate the healing field within ourselves. Look at that. I mean, that's joy, right? Yeah. That's just pure, unadulterated joy, just shining forth. And there was tremendous healing happening during that retreat. Look at Ray, he's smiling right now because he remembers, he remembers that moment. Oh, so we can't talk about courage without talking about Nelson Mandela. In my heart and in my mind, those two are synonymous. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Right? We get afraid, folks. Fear is there. Fear is part of our personality. It's part of what we understand. It's been very useful for us. It keeps us from burning our hands on the stove. It keeps us from getting involved with relationships that may be harmful to us. It keeps us away, perhaps, from addictions. But there is a point where the fear doesn't actually need to be the motivator. The thing that can call us forth is our joy. That is the peace that allows us to be called forth. But we have to be brave enough, the courage to heal, to walk right through the center of it. We don't go around it. We don't avoid it. We walk straight through it. And the way we do that, even when we're freaking out, and even when we're totally terrified, and even when we don't know what on earth is going on, and even when we're struggling with all kinds of chemicalization the way I am right now, is we lean into each other. This is our most important tool. Look around at each other. This is the thing that makes this community a healing community. The fact that we say yes to show up for each other, to be present for each other, and not in the, oh my God, you're so sick, oh, that's so awful. No, in the way of, wow, look at you, you're processing, you're healing. I know it might not feel good, but there is something happening, and we're celebrating that. And we are holding, my doctor told me this cough could last a month, and what was my immediate response? Oh, no, 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 no. That is not happening. So I need all of you to help anchor that for me, right? Because when I'm in the middle of a 10-minute cough, coughing jag, it's hard to remember that this isn't going to last for an entire month. That's what we do for each other. We hold the high watch for each other. It's not just prayer chaplains. Yeah, the prayer chaplains are there and they've said yes, but it's each of your call to hold the high watch for each other, for this community. So I'm going to leave you with Myrtle's final quote from Myrtle, which I just loved, especially given the love letters from God that we did with the qualities all over our skin. Healing is the stirring up within you of the God qualities, which have lain dormant or which have been misused or neglected. Oh. Let's stir it up, folks. Huh? Let's stir up those God qualities. Let's bring them up. Let's raise ourselves up so that whatever within you that you have neglected to know, to see, to understand about yourself, that it is allowed to shine forth, unadulterated, no apologies. I used to have a theater company in New York, and our tagline was all female, all the time, no apologies. So you get to say, all God, all the time, no apologies. Right? You get to know, all whole, all the time, no apologies. You get to stand in that magnificence.
Amen.
So this is the call. And we get to show up for each other, and that is where we get the courage to heal. We see each other healing. We know what's happening within ourselves, and we say, yes. We're willing to stir that pot up. We're willing to let go of the tried and the true and the familiar, and we're willing to sort of walk out in faith boldly into that uncharted territory. Because guess what, folks? Only more good is waiting to express as your life. That's the truth. Only more good. What if you actually knew that? What if you actually knew that? Only more good. Whew. How much more courage would we have? How much more bravely would we step out into the world? So let's take this into our time of meditation.